Half the day, everybody, and good morning. Welcome to Crime Time. Thanks for starting your day the KUAM way. We're here live at the next to the Guam Community College. We're actually in the Guam Police Department's crime lab here in Manila. Again, I'm with Officer Paul Tapal. Paul, tell us what's the agenda for today.
So we really want to showcase the efforts of the Guam Police Department and the dual roles, and with our civilian support employees working alongside our uniform officers, particularly with criminal investigation. So you have our uniform officers, which are our crime scene investigators, and of course our science behind it is really our civilian support employees who do our chief criminalists and everything. But this tour wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for the blessings of Captain Tim Santos, who's the division chief here at the crime lab, and of course our evidence control. He falls under the investigations bureau, which is the bureau chief there is Major Fred Chargalev. So Captain Tim Santos, and of course our chief criminalist is Monica Salas.
All right, guys, tell us about the crime lab and what you guys do here.
Okay, I'm Captain Tim Santos, and basically I'm the division chief for forensic science. We're basically part of an investigations bureau. In other words, that's, for in layman's terms, that's the detective bureau. But in our shop, we're in a support role where we collect and analyze evidence in regards to criminal cases that will later lead to prosecution. And again, like it was said earlier, the difference that we have is it's kind of like we're not the people that are going to go out and say, hey, you're under arrest. We're the guys, we're the science behind it, and things like that.
We gather, collect the evidence,
Yes.
analyze the evidence. Monica, tell us about your job.
Yes, I'm the chief criminalist here at the Forensic Science Division, and my primary function here is to manage the analytical units of the forensic science, the scientists. So I oversee their work and make sure that the quality control is in place, and also provide guidance in whatever questions that they may have, since I've been here quite a long time.
Right, and up here on the board, right, this kind of is a summary, a brief summary of some of the things that you do here. And I know that I was part of the GPD Deputy Chiefs of Police program, and I actually was here for the presentation that you did. And if you can break down what you guys do here on here.
The Forensic Science Division composes of 3 sections, which is the Forensic Science section, the Crime Scene Response section, and the Evidential Control section. The Forensic Science section is the section that I oversee, and that is composed of the Drug Analysis Unit, Firearms and Tool Mark, and Serology Unit. The Crime Scene Response section is overseen by a police sergeant, and that is composed of the Crime Scene Investigators, Fingerprint Latent Print Unit, and the Photo Lab, which we will all get to see once we go back there. And then the Evidential Control Unit manages all the evidence and property that GPD gets in connection with cases. And so when we go back, we're going to go back in the order of from the front to the back. So that's what these numbers are, because the labs aren't arranged in the same order as by section.
All right, so let's go ahead and go inside.
Really, our CSI guys are really in the front line with an ongoing, an acute case that really is happening. They play a real critical role in preserving and gathering evidence. So it's really important that the CSI officers who are come out and everything really pay attention to detail, because of the fact that a case can be made or lost based on the evidence and the way we handle evidence. And this is why they really focus on paying attention to details.
Now we're going to come into the Fingerprint Unit, and I will introduce you to the fingerprint examiner.
Okay.
We have here today Mrs. Julie Polino, and she will take you through what they do in this unit.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Hi, welcome to the Fingerprint Unit. My name is Julie Polino. I'm one of the fingerprint examiners here at the Crime Lab. What we do here in the Fingerprint Unit is we examine items of evidence for the presence of latent prints using basic black powder or chemical processing to develop latent prints on items that are confiscated from crime scenes. We also perform comparisons of latent prints to known standards and issue reports with our findings for investigation purposes. We also, fingerprints are unique. Everybody has their own fingerprints. So what happens is these fingerprints are lines, or what we call ridges, and these ridges form various unique characteristics. And the unique characteristics we look for, we have some here, are these ridge characteristics that are formed within the womb of your mother. So within the 12th week of gestation, these ridge characteristics are formed. We have ridge characteristics that start on one side and makes an abrupt stop. We call that a ridge ending. We have a ridge that starts on one side and divides into two, which is called a bifurcation. And all of these down here is what we look for. So these are formed in the womb of your mother. So that's why they're individual characteristics. So every movement a mother makes, every turn or twist a mother or an infant makes, is what forms these ridge characteristics. So that's why they're individual to each and every one of us. So also what we have here are 3 different patterns that we look for. We have arches, loops, and whorls. So the arches start on one side and they make an upthrust and exit on the opposite side. With the loop, it starts on one side, makes an upthrust, and exit the same side. And with the whorl, it's basically self-explanatory, which is the whorl pattern. So these are the 3 basic patterns that we look for in fingerprints.
And there's different types of prints, right?
Correct. We have 2 different types of prints. We have fingerprints, which are inked fingerprints. This is what we used to do in the past. We used to take printer's ink and roll them on 10-print cards. And so those are called known prints. We also have latent prints, which are hidden prints. So latent prints are crime scene prints or hidden prints, and these have to be developed in order to see with the naked eye. We have 3 different crime scene prints, which is latent, patent, and plastic. The latent prints are not visible, like I mentioned earlier, which needs developing. The patent print is a semi-visible print, which is left in blood, oil, ink, grease, etc. And then plastic, which is can be left on wax, putty, butter, clay, etc. So these are the 3 types of latent prints, crime scene prints that we have.
We do have a question from one of our viewers watching on Facebook. O.D. Duenas asks, can twins have the same print?
No, that's a good question. We actually did an experiment with quads here on Guam. And so we wanted to do that experiment on our own. So we went and got the permission of the mother, of course, and we fingerprinted all 4 quads when they were in 2nd grade, I believe. And so when we examined all the prints, every fingerprint was different to include the fingers of each of the quads. And then we also fingerprinted them 10 years later, and we saw scars, but everything else was still the same.
So,
Nothing changed.
So what happens after you lift the prints?
Okay.
So you guys do the analyzation, and then you run it through a database?
We run it through an automated fingerprint identification system, which is what we have here. So when the crime scene investigators recover latent prints from crime scenes, I had some boxes here, but they're no longer there. They bring it into the lab. So the fingerprint examiners examine those latent prints. So they're like they're dusted off of objects, put on a white card, and then they bring that into the lab, and the fingerprint examiners look at them. I have an example right here. So these are the cards that are lifted and turned in by the investigators, and then we have latent prints on the back of these cards. So the examiners actually look at these latent prints, and we examine what was lifted off of the crime scene or the objects that were at the scene. And if we do look at these prints and we discover that there's latent print of value, then we use that latent print of value and we search it against the database, which is all the arrest prints that are entered into the database on a daily basis.
How large is that database? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So these are also forwarded to, the arrest prints are forwarded to the FBI. The latent prints are searched locally.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as you you can see crime is not solved in 60 minutes. There's a lot of tedious work that goes into it and everything, and
Thanks, Julie.
the science behind it, it's really, as minute as people will think about a home break-in. It's like, oh, I just want it to file for records. To wanting to file it for records versus us really going in and pulling our crime scene investigators out there so they can actually dust and lift prints. It's very, very, very important to making not just a case, but may also break several cases that are reported to the Guam Police Department. So when they come out and to small scenes, even as minute as car break-ins, they can actually lift prints. Granted that it's not exposed to the elements.
And the accuracy of the prints, it's almost like 100%.
Yeah, I mean it is your identity. That's your DNA. So it's really the human characteristics that really shows who you are and stuff. So a lot of our cases are actually closed based on evidence of that and the science behind it. It's hard to disprove science.
And so now we're in the firearms exam lab, right? Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Good morning.
Good to see you again.
Hi. Good to see you. Hi.
All right. So this is Captain.
Oh. I'm Officer Taikenko. Yes, and I am the forensic firearms examiner for the department. And our main focus here is to determine whether or not ammunition component was fired from a particular firearm.
And you actually been here for what, 30 years, right?
32 years in the
32
department.
Yeah. So
And,
you know what you're doing.
yes, I like to think so.
All right, show us what's going on.
Okay, so what I have here now is two expended casings, and what I'm looking at is, this is a mock-up. I'm looking at the striations or the markings that are left on the casing from the firearm.
Okay.
So by comparing these striations, we can determine if a particular gun fired this casing or those casings under there. And so, if we were to if I was to give you an example, this casing came from the crime scene. It was found at the crime scene, and then the casing on the right came from a test fire, and I'll show you where we test fire guns. And so by looking at this simultaneously, we again are looking at these lines and seeing if they match up between the two casings. And
This is signature, right, of the
Yes.
firearm?
Yes. So I can show you the back.
Oh,
You wanna
okay.
see that?
So each firearm actually has its signature, and it's exclusive to that firearm. So that's exactly what Officer Taikenko is elaborating about. The firearm that fired that casing or that round actually has a signature to it.
Not the guns. Don't show the guns in the back. Okay. Okay. So these are some of the.
Yes.
As long as he doesn't focus on the guns in the barrel, then he can turn this way.
Okay. Yeah, just show the guns.
In the barrel, but you can show this. So these are two firing receptacles that we have. One is called a forensic buddy, and we use that to test fire handguns. And then the green tank you see back here, this is another test fire receptacle. We use this for high-powered rifles, and shooting from this end. The bullet will go through these cotton and foam inserts, and we'd find it, depending on the caliber, we'd find it further down in the tank.
Is this two or?
Yes, it's two.
Okay.
If we were to shoot a high-powered rifle, we'd need to connect both tanks, because shooting from here, we'd find the bullet
All the way
down
there?
down at that
Alright,
end.
I see. This is all foam and cotton, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And then this uses rubber balls. These are examples.
Oh, when you shoot.
Yeah, it's all in this canister. So it keeps the bullet pristine, so it doesn't interfere with the markings that we're looking for on the bullet.
You're gonna fire a firearm? No. Does it get really loud in here?
Yeah, he's our expert.
people watching on Facebook right now. They're fascinated by the science.
Okay. All right, thank you so
You're
much,
welcome.
Officer Tekenko.
You got it?
I'll take you over to the serology unit now.
All right, all right.
What is serology?
Serology is in our context, it's the study of body fluids. And the serologists today will explain exactly what body fluids we analyze and test for, and some of the equipment that we use to screen for body fluids.
Are we going to have to put on the
They don't have anything out right now, so.
okay. Good morning. Good morning. Hi. All right, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Zenobia Lynn. I'm a serologist here at the Forensic Science Division. And I've been here, this is my 13th year in this unit. I was in the drug unit for 16 years, so I've been here for quite a while.
So what are you going to show us today?
Okay, we do presumptives tests that are just like the ones that the guys do in the CSI work. When they go out into the field, and let's say that they come upon a homicide or, an injured person or something like that, and there's something at the scene, then in order to rule out or rule in whatever it is that they're collecting, they have these presumptive tests that they do out in the field, and when they bring in the evidence to me or to us, then we also do the same thing here. And we do confirmatory testing as well. So, So today, I'm going to show you a presumptive test that we do called the Kastle-Meyer test.
I'm sorry?
Kastlemeyer, or a phenolphthalein. And it is a presumptive test for the possible presence of blood. So we have this little t-shirt here, and it has what might be blood on it. Because, a lot of substances can appear to be blood. This is kind of reddish brown. It could be chocolate, it could be ketchup, it could be a myriad of things. So what we're going to do is first test our reagent to make sure that it's working properly. And so we take a standard that we keep on hand just for those purposes. And what you're looking for is a bright pink pop of color. Now this is your Kastle-Meyer reagent right here. So you put a couple of drops on there. And the second reagent is hydrogen peroxide. So you put a couple of drops on there. And what you see here is that pink pop of color right here. So when I do my swabbings, or the guys out in CSI do their swabbings on their material or whatever it is, then that's the same thing that they're looking for. So right here, I'm taking a moistened swab. It's just with deionized water. And I'll do a transfer of the stain right here. So you can see a little bit came off on there. And a couple of drops of reagent on there. And the hydrogen peroxide.
Whoa.
And so you got a bright pink pop of color right here.
So
So
I was going to say, so that indicates that it's blood?
that it's possibly blood. Okay. And then after that, then we do confirmatory testing, further testing and stuff. So that kind of, let's say you go to a crime scene and you got a bunch of different stains. You go to, let's say, some community store or something, and the report is that the guy cut himself on his way out, but there are a lot of red stains around. People have spilled stuff and things like that. So what the CSI guys would do is go around and they'll do their swabbings, and then they'll bring the swabbings to me. So my job is to kind of rule out, okay, this isn't blood, this may be blood, this isn't blood, this may be blood. And then I go ahead and do confirmatory testing. Yes, this is blood. And if need be, then it'll be sent forward for DNA testing to make sure that, to put a suspect, if a suspect has been found at the scene of crime.
I guess all of the samples usually turn out pink? I mean, say if it was something else other than blood.
Pugwa.
Yeah, or pugwa, whatever. Would that turn out pink?
No.
No, okay. So it's blood only turns out pink.
There are other things, but it's not an immediate pop of color. Let's say
Okay.
something like rust or things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would get a color change, but it wouldn't be as immediate.
Do all of the CSI agents, they're all trained in this? They are?
Yes, they are.
Wow.
You actually have a shout out right now from Doris Adam.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, this is really important because blood is, one of the evidence in a lot of our cases that we see out there. And finding trace blood, our patrol officers who do their due diligence in identifying where they found it, we indicated in the report. They work closely with the CSI officers to come out, gather the evidence, store it, and of course properly handle it, bring it in, and it becomes, the evidence and the case in itself, to include the science, it actually grows so we can actually have more backing and findings to hopefully get the conviction based on evidence that we gather and evidence that's presented through science.
And
So-
this is also the same process like when they respond to criminal sexual conduct cases, right? And they look for, semen and things like that. This is the same exact process that's used.
Uh,
We can show you the ALS,
Okay.
the alternate light source.
Yes.
So you can follow Arthur Harris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Alternate light.
Yes, so this is the alternate light source.
I'm sorry, can we get your name first?
Oh, hi, my name is Arthur Perez.
You're gonna have to speak up a little bit.
Okay, sorry about the fan. My name is Arthur Perez. This is the alternate light source. It will make certain body fluids fluoresce under certain wavelengths of light. So in order to make it work, I would need you guys to put on glasses or these
I'll turn it
goggles.
on over my,
Even over the camera,
yeah,
so that way,
you can see.
Yeah.
But you need to put on glasses.
Me too?
yeah,
Oh, right.
safety.
Turn on the light.
It's over there.
This is a high-powered light.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is gonna work in the camera. But we'll see.
Okay. Chief, can you please? Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, so turn on the light. Here we go. And this helps us screen for certain body fluids. If you looked at this shirt earlier, you can see that there are several stains on it.
Yeah.
And if we wanted to look for certain stains that we wanted to test, it would glow under fluorescent lights like that. And certain different body fluids glow differently. So here we have blood. The brown stains are blood. They don't fluoresce under ultraviolet light. They need luminol to do that.
What did you say? Luminol?
Luminol, yeah. Just like on those crime scene shows,
Yeah.
they got all that. This is saliva that glows too. It even glows on this. You can see if the little pencil markings. Saliva doesn't glow as much, but if we move over to semen and urine, it glows like a Christmas tree. And that's probably what that is if you do a side-to-side comparison like that. And then we do more presumptive testing
Yeah.
to see if that's
What it
it actually is. And then we do confirmatory after that.
And again, this is where
Thank you, Chief.
all of the CSI detectives, they go out and they lift.
Yes, and
Lift or
this is why
test.
evidence is important because evidence really does make or break the case based on what crime was committed. So the gathering and collecting and preserving of evidence, it really is instrumental in closing the cases and of course getting the conviction. And as you see firsthand, a lot of our scientists here are the civilian support employees who really are the backbone of police work. We go out there and we do all the the dirty work and everything, but these guys actually do the dirtier work by digging deep into getting the evidence that we need to bring to court proceedings and everything, and hopefully get the conviction. That's the main goal, is getting the conviction. And like I said, it's really hard to disprove science. When you have science to back your case, it's pretty much I don't want to say a slam dunk or anything, but it's really hard. It's, as a defense attorney, it's something that we have the backings of our science, and it solidifies the case. It's that's where we can see the path for a conviction, and that's every officer that makes an arrest, that's what we want to do, is gain the conviction.
Okay, Sergeant Tapal, I think we may have to look into another investigation right now because Sabrina may have committed the crime of theft because she's still wearing the glasses.
There you go.
So we're gonna come into the drug exam unit now.
I haven't been here.
Yes, and Miss. Hi. Hello.
Hello, how are you? I'm Annalyn Gatasaki-Gami, a criminalist 3 here, and I've been with the department for 13 years. You have questions? No. So this is the drug analysis unit. This is where all the confiscated contraband goes. We do serve not just the island GPD law enforcement, but we do serve CNMI, Palau, also the federal agencies as well. Yeah, so basically what happens is if like somebody gets pulled over for some kind of traffic stop and they just happen to find some kind of paraphernalia in their seats or whatnot, that becomes evidence, and that evidence gets brought here before it goes to trial, and we determine if there's any illegal substance in them. So by doing so for example, if they do get caught and the officers they want to do like a field test. So this is like an example of a field test. They would just drop the substance in, and there's these vials that they crack in order, and it will produce a color. And the color will indicate what category drug it belongs to. So if there is a color, they're trained to go ahead and submit an analysis request form to us, and before it goes to court, we would need to confirm if it is what it is. So basically that's what they do, and what we do here, we're going to go into the instrument room.
Okay. So this is like when I get the magistrate's complaints and I look at it and they say that they're
Presumptive positive.
yeah,
Yes,
presumptive
exactly.
positive.
So that test is presumptive positive. This is not a confirmation. So what would confirm a substance are these instruments here, and this is the most CSI effect you'll ever get. So what happens is we take a sample, we dissolve it into this vial. This vial has the lab number and item number that is related to the case. We program it into the computer. The computer tells this instrument. Yep. Okay, and this computer here tells this instrument here, this arm to pick up what vial to get injected into the instrument. This is called a gas chromatograph mass spectrometer. It produces 2 different.
What?
You use that on Words with Friends and you won.
Yes, but it's short GCMS. Okay. It does produce 2 different graphs. So this data here tells us how long it stays in the column and how many actual compounds are in the sample. So like this one here, it's telling us there's only 1 peak, which is only 1 substance, and it's coming out at this time. So it's coming out at 5.662 minutes. And then this other graph here produces what we call a fragmentation pattern, and this we can compare it to published references and also the library within the actual computer to tell us this is exactly what it is based on this fragmentation pattern because of what scientists have done like a long time ago, and this is what it is. So basically if we click here, it tells us it gives us these top 10 choices, right? So then we look at it. So this is the benzene ethylamine and alpha dimethyl is the scientific name for methamphetamine, which is a highly abused drug in our island, unfortunately. So basically, yes. So if you look at the graph here, the fragmentation pattern itself is very similar, but it's not the computer that does the final, what do you call, the identification. It's the analyst that does the identification based on the color test, the different data that we obtain from the instruments, and another instrument that I will show you over here. And all of those drive, then we make a report and then we forward it to the AGs. And based on that, they do their own thing. Yeah. Okay. So if we go over here real quick, this is another one. This is the other instrument that can provide us a confirmation. It's called the Fourier Transform Infrared Spectrometer, in short, FTIR.
Also, this is the short one.
Yes.
Otherwise known as a small name.
Yeah, but it's also a very powerful tool. Oh, sorry, guys. Is that my last name? Yes.
Let me move that. You didn't say that.
So basically, it's almost the same thing, but this one we don't have to actually dissolve a sample into a vial. We can take pills, or we can take the white substance and just put it into a crystal, and then what happens is the infrared light will excite the different molecules, and the excitement of the different molecules will produce us a graph. And I'll show you what kind of graph that will be. And also those graphs are also in published references. So we don't make up any of the science. The science is actually one of the oldest science in the forensic field. It's been confirmed over time, and this unit it's a lot of the data we don't have. It's not. It's pretty. What do you call? It's firm. If that's the word that I'm looking for.
It's already existent.
Yes, and it's been tested
It's a
through,
reference.
and it's
Indisputable evidence, yeah.
it's validated. So it's not like we're providing one result and saying that we're calling it. We actually go through a different guidelines to say, okay, did we do this, and did we do this, and then all those results have to jive to provide an identification. We can't just say, oh yeah, no, we think it's this. We have to be sure if there's any kind of doubt, because what we do may or may not send someone to prison, right? And may or may not have, we can help that person, even though they're on the other side, right?
You guys must be really busy, right?
Yeah. Like I said, it's not just the front line that you see. It's really the civilian support employees that we talked about last week, and the importance that they play in the function of the Guam Police Department. You see all the men and women in blue out there, you know, in the front line, but the real work is really in the back with our civilian support employees, and they play that important role in every function of the Guam Police Department.
Okay, so this is the graph I'm talking about. So like, for example, this is one sample, and it produces this graph. No other substance will produce this graph. And then, so we can search the library, and then it gives us, again, the top best hits. It's not the computer that will make the final identification. Again, it would be the analyst. So if you want, like, this is the standard that we ran with this same instrument, and we can just copy this and overlay it with the sample, and you can see that it is what it is.
Yeah.
So I can bring up another substance, and you can see for sure that it wouldn't be that.
So this is the step where you basically rule out false positives.
Yes, yes. So this is acetaminophen, also known as Tylenol. If we just,
Which one is that one? The
this
red?
is the red.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna take this out here. Hide. We can say that for the blue graph is not Tylenol, because the graph does not match at all. The peaks don't overlay, and it's like a fingerprint thing.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah. So that's our science. It's pretty simple. It's forward, and it's not. We don't make up anything. We have the instruments to back us up.
So even though substances might have the same physical characteristics, molecularly they're quite different, and these instruments give us the molecular data as to what that compound actually is, and on the molecular level you can see it's quite different.
It's pretty
So-
mind-blowing.
I'll take you over to the crime scene section now.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, we're going to the
Crime scene.
crime scene.
Yes.
Crime scene lab.
Yes.
I'm not yet have you guys.
Oh, right here.
This is what everybody's probably most familiar with. They watch a lot of TV or movies.
CSI. Hi. How you guys? Okay. All right. So with the introduction.
Hi. Okay. My name is Police Officer 2 Lucas Perez. I'm with the Crime Scene Response Section and the Photo Lab.
And I'm Sergeant John Camacho. I'm the supervisor of the Crime Scene Response Section.
Okay. Tell us about what you guys do.
Okay, so well, first of all, I'll start off with the Photo Lab. The Photo Lab is down the hall, but as of 2009, we switched from negative photography, film photography to digital photography. So all the equipment in there is kind of obsolete right now, and so now it's just a computer that will save and record and maintain a record for those crime scene photos. Another one of the responsibilities for the photo lab is advanced photography, low light to no light photography, and also just prepping photos for trial for the cases that are coming up. I also cover down for the crime scene response section, which is basically the CSIs, the crime scene investigators. These are the officers that are going out to the crime scenes to process actual crime scenes, the boots on the ground, I guess, if you may. Over here on the table here, this is some of the basic gear that we carry. Out to the scenes, we got a camera, we have a video camera, and then we have a basic fingerprint collecting kit, a latent fingerprint collecting kit. So,
Do you guys also collect the samples for like the stains,
yes.
fluids?
Yes. So out in the field, we'll have another kit, which is basically paper bags, cotton swabs. If you guys went into serology already, we would have that same phenolphthalein test if we get a call out for any type of crime scene that may have possible blood in it. We'll go into the fridge, grab out the phenolphthalein test, just so we can test what possible red stains that are at the scene for presumptive positive blood. And then
for the drug.
yes. So once we get that, we'll collect those samples, and then we'll give it to Ms. Z in serology. Other things we do is obviously we take photographs of the scene first, and then we'll go and process the scene for any latent fingerprints. This is your basic kit here. You're gonna have so what you're doing is you're looking for latent fingerprints. Latent basically means that it's not visible with the naked eye, and we need some sort of medium to develop those fingerprints that are left behind. Those mediums can be all sorts of things. There's chemical mediums, and then there's conventional powders. So for here, we got a basic kit here. So we have two powders here. One is what we call a silver black powder. This is basically silver powder and also black pulverized volcanic ash. Those will be mixed in for conventional powder. And then this here is the magnetic powder. All the powders and all the mediums have pros and cons for different surfaces, different substrates, and different types of applications to try to develop those films. Once we develop a fingerprint, we're going to use the fingerprint tape. We're going to put it on the fingerprint, and we're going to lift it. We're going to lift it on, and then we'll place it on one of these cards here. We'll fill out the pertinent information, put the fingerprint in the back, the latent fingerprint, fill out the pertinent information, and then we'll turn it into Miss Julie at the fingerprint lab. So as you can see, you guys went through all the labs prior to here. So we're basically the collectors, and then they're the analysis. They'll do the analysis on those items that are collected.
That you were talking about.
Right. So
but this is the case where everything, all of your.
yeah. So no, this is just the fingerprint kit.
Okay.
The case is basically the case that we're talking about is just a case of paper bags and cotton swabs. It's nothing too complicated. But here, this is just your basic kit, and the case that we have is usually in the cars and ready to go. So yeah. That's basically what we usually do in regards to crime scene investigation. Our main mission is to give a true and accurate depiction of the scene, preserve it, and get it ready for trials that may come next week or 10 years down the line, 30 years down the line.
How many officers are CSI, right?
Yeah, we have a total of 7 CSIs, 2 for every shift. We have a 24-hour operation. So we have a graveyard, swing, and a day shift, and then we have 2 in each shift and 1 floater. Okay, and then when somebody goes on leave, that floater covers down, and then if that floater goes on leave, then Officer Perez steps in and covers down. So we have a certain system that we do just to keep the continuity of the case log, the case amount, because sometimes they have a heavier caseload on certain days and times of the week. So we make the shifts adjust to the type of case.
So what Sarge said, we have CSI is manning 24/7, but if in the event a major crime happens, such as a homicide, any big home invasions, something really big, the sergeant here will activate a team separate from what's on the line, and then we'll go and process that scene in a team, because of course it's gonna require a lot more time, a lot more effort to take care of these big scenes. So inside the lab, or this is basically where we process what we get out in the field. So we have our heat sealer to heat seal the evidence that we need to do. We have the bags. We have our refrigeration, which holds the phenolphthalein test like you saw in the serology lab. It needs to be kept refrigerated. We have our drying locker here. This is basically what we use this for, is for any evidence such as bloodied evidence, any moist evidence like clothing and whatnot. They have to be packaged dry, so we'll keep it in here until it dries up. Obviously, we can't put it into a conventional dryer because that heat and that the agitation could disrupt whatever trace evidence was on that particular item. So we would keep it in here. We'll seal it, and then it'll run. So basically, it'll run. It's just pretty loud. And so what it does, it just circulates room temperature air. And so it takes a long time for these items to dry because of the care that's given in regards to keeping those items intact with trace evidence.
A lot of times in a major crime scene, it actually come to a halt until these guys are done with their service or their part within the investigation, whether it be a fatal traffic crash or whether it be a homicide. Once CSI is on scene, we actually stop everything. And we play by them now because of the critical evidence. Yep. We have to give a go by of where we walk, the traces that we gathered, and everything. Just because we were the lead agent or the lead investigator, that doesn't mean that as you're seeing, once these guys come on board, it's like everything stops. We wait until they're clear because of the critical evidence that we may miss as a responder or as an investigator. These guys can actually find and pick up because the exposure that they have and everything in observing different types of scenes, these guys know what to pick off, the keen senses that they have. They know what's critical for evidentiary value and stuff and preservation of the case. So as you saw, these are our uniform officers, and you can see the partnership that they have with our civilian support employees. So it's really, really important that we have that sort of teamwork and bringing closure to cases.
And it seems you have to have a lot of specialized training to be able to do this,
Well,
right? Certifications, perhaps, right?
Yeah, correct. Sometimes, when we have the funding available and the grants, we send some of our personnel to certain specialized training like blood spatter and introduction to fingerprint analysis, which Officer Perez was fortunate to be a part of. And in line with that, this is one of our fuming chambers. It's another tool we use here. It's for the compound cyanoacrylate, basically what we commonly known as super glue or crazy glue, the compound. So these are the two chambers we utilize when we have some evidence and the fingerprint unit, suppose it's the weekend and the fingerprint unit's out, we can't use their chamber because it's a secured area. So if we need to find fingerprints for a gun, other than the medium of using powders, we do have we have the fumes to do it, right? And
they did that same thing in Beverly Hills Cop, right?
Correct.
In the movie.
Yeah, they did that.
So for the guns, you take the gun and you seal it with super glue and put it in the chamber?
You would just put it in either chamber, depending on the size of it. This is obviously created for a rifle, but if even for a smaller item, it doesn't necessarily have to be a gun.
Yeah.
But we put them in the chamber, and we put the chemical in, and remember it's cyanoacrylate, so it's basically a compound of it's the cyano in it basically means cyanide, so it's toxic. Half the compounds we use, the chemicals that we use on both sides of the fence, the CSIs and the criminalists, are toxic chemicals. So you need proper ventilation and proper training and proper areas to conduct the
Because they did that, they
films.
put, I remember in that movie, I mean, not to make light of it, but in Beverly Hills Cop, Eddie Murphy said, "Oh, here's an old cop trick. You take crazy glue and then you put it inside like an aquarium or like a dried out aquarium, and then you put the thing there, and all of a sudden it bonded to the fingerprints and showed the prints."
And that's somebody just
And that's legit
some
science.
yeah someone just stumbled upon that science. When Beverly Hills Cop came out back in the 80s and the later portion came out in the early 90s, late 80s and early 90s, that medium was just starting to be tested. It was just getting off the ground, so. But you do see it in some of the movies, and it's true to form. It was a true science.
What's true is that we don't solve a case in 60 minutes, and the intricate work that these guys do, the boots on the ground, and of course the final processing with our criminalists and everything. It really is a team effort in bringing closure to a case. Now we're talking a case, with the inundation, us getting inundated with numerous calls, the burglaries, home invasions and stuff. You can imagine the workload that they do and they have to endure. But nonetheless, the Guam Police Department remains committed in serving and protecting the community. And you guys saw firsthand and exactly what happens behind the scenes of reporting a case to officers coming out, to evidence being gathered, and what we do with the evidence. So. You want to say something?
That concludes the tour of the lab. Those are the five or six. He combined photo lab and crime scene together in one. So 6 units of services that we provide to the community of Guam and to the judicial system. Aside from that, we have an administrative section that makes sure that we get everybody the tools that they need to do their job. And so that's it.
Any final comments, guys?
Thank you for coming, and we appreciate being part of the Facebook Live community. Thank you.
Officer Perez?
Yeah, I guess the takeaway is just this information, just putting information out and having the public informed. I didn't know anything about this, even as a police officer. I've been in the lab for 4 years. Prior to that, I was 10 years in patrol. I had no idea about what's going on over here. And now that you're in, I see the benefits of just keeping the public informed. It makes everyone's job easier if everybody knows what's kind of going on, and that way everybody's kind of on the same page. So that's the takeaway for me regarding just keeping the information coming out.
Well, thank you guys for everything you do for keeping our community safe. That's going to do it for us here at the Crime Lab in Manila. I'm Sabrina Salas Matanane. You've been watching Crime Time. Bye.